Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Barnes.
And I'm Mark Langley.
This week we're going to talk about some brumbies, that's wild horses, who are particularly difficult to get close to, and just tools of handling these exceptionally nervous horses. But first of all, I want to ask you, Mark, a question that's come through from Cassie, and it's about a horse that's a fairly new horse for one of her friends that has a very occasionally unpredictably started to buck and rear. The rider's a beginner, so of course it's worrying for her. The horse is a 7-year-old Clydesdale cross quarter horse, and I think your answer is just going to be quite helpful in terms of just understanding how we need to approach our horse training. So the horse owner's booked onto one of your clinics. She's watching all of your videos avidly. She's listened to the Q&As that you do. But she would just like some kind of idea of what she needs to go between here and now in the clinic. How does she stop it from escalating? What sort of things would you be doing with this horse that you don't know much about, but then can occasionally buck and rear?
Well, the first thing, I just want to, because I did read the question before, and I just want to add. There's something I wanted to add in. You mentioned it too, didn't you, Jenny? It was a Clydesdale quarter horse, and I don't want to be picky in breeds and say, this breed's worse than another breed. I'm not that sort of person, but I do say something that we find in people is they buy a thoroughbred, a Clydesdale cross because they're going to be nice, quiet, kind of plod along horses. And if anyone's got anything to do with Clydesdales, they are the sensitive cold blood, as in they don't have as much confidence as some of the other kind of more stoic style cold bloods that you find in those heavier horses. So when you buy a Clydie, you've got to go into it thinking, I've got a very sensitive horse and I have to be very conscious of getting it to feel good about itself and the situations I put it in, and also the information that I present to it. And in Clydies, you're building, like a lot of breeds, you're building as much confidence in them as you are anything else. So just something to think about, because I get a lot of Clydesdales that are very sensitive, very nervous, frightened horses that just need some help. So in helping your horse, I would say your horse was working in a frightened way, but not bucking and rearing. And the more, so you can control a horse and keep it kind of together, but it's not really together inside. And a lot of people can get away with that to a certain extent until the horse really opens up when a road train drives past or something like that, or and the horse really opens up and spooks, but they won't buck and do anything. They'll ride around the arena and in their paddock okay, and they're just frightened, but they're held between the boundaries of quite firm pressures that kind of keep it all together. And then when those horses get sold and they go out into the world and they get ridden a bit less, and they start to not cope with things very well. So basically, I wouldn't do anything in the sense of riding between now and the clinic, in case you sort of get in a pickle out there, because I would come to the clinic and I would like to identify your horse thoroughly. And I'd like to sort of have a look at your horse and identify thoroughly all the things that I think need help. But basically, it's going to be bringing that horse back to the start and working out all the things that it doesn't understand. I'd say there's a lot of things it doesn't understand, just the way it leads. A horse that rears is a horse that doesn't understand pressure, feels trapped in pressure. So I'd say it still feels trapped within the boundaries of pressure. It's maybe frightened of pressure. Its training could have been, I got to move away from pressure, and I just got to move away from pressure, and it hadn't had time to think about all the things in its environment. So then it's not taking on its environment very well because it's still paranoid about the pressure. So all those things need need to be addressed. So you've got to go back and say, what of all the little things that it doesn't understand, much like a lot of answers that I give on this podcast, is what doesn't the horse understand? What are the things that I can control that create too much anxiety in the horse? Don't even take them into a place where there's things that they can't control, like things that you can't control, like kangaroos and people driving cars and all these other things. Work on the things that you can control and what it doesn't understand and what it's frightened of. And you'll probably find a lot in there. And you've got to really itemise everything you're doing and look deeply into your horse and say, gee, my horse getting really worried when I just take on that right rein, and it kind of gets a bit sort of, there's a change in its breath and its eye hardens up, and, you know, I've got to fix that because I can't be taking that right rein when the horse is scared of a truck over there, and then all of a sudden there's a truck and a right rein attacking at the same time. So that's why they panic and they rear and they run away from pressure. So I'd say there's a lot of things in pressure that you've got to control, that you can control, that you've got to get the horse to understand, and then we can take them out into the real world. The reason why the horse follows along on trail rides better is because it doesn't have to process all the things as much, because it's another confident horse that's processing, and it just goes, I'm just going to, it's good. Having another horse to follow is an alternative. So it goes, oh, I've got a good alternative, I'll just follow this, and that's why it just doesn't have to think, it just follows the other horse, and that means you get that ride done a bit safer. But that's not a safe horse. A horse that just follows another horse is going to, you're going to get exposed too quickly, too soon. So yeah, there'll be a lot of things that you've got to think about in there, and I'm excited to sort of have a look at your horse and try and help you identify those things and give you some clarity, because sometimes going back and offering some clarity and then starting again a little bit is not such a bad thing, especially if you enjoy horses and you enjoy helping them through. There's a lot of satisfaction in putting those small pieces back together, because you get a soft horse and they feel good.
And I guess your pressure's off. You got the clinic coming up, you got to have Mark's, support there that's going to be quite targeted. So you could just do nothing, like he says, or maybe you could, if you wanted to fiddle around with your horse, you could start the challenge. It's probably the best spots.
Yeah, start the challenge. That'll teach you a lot of observation, and even just go back to basic leading. When I pick up the lead and go a little faster, is the horse fighting it? Is the horse fighting pressure? Just look at the little things in leading where your horse may fight pressure, brace, and get worried, and fix those things. And when I walk up to the horse, does it connect with me? Is it soft? So through the challenge, you'll sort of work on it. It'll get you to sort of observe things a bit more, and look. Is your horse connected? Is it disconnecting when you walk up to it? All that sort of stuff, and then it works through just a few things, and it just teaches you more powers of observation, and those things will really help you work out how you what you work on, I should say.
Okay, we're going to move on to the wild horses, the Brumbies. First question for you, Mark, is from Nat, and she has this 4-year-old Brumby mare who's been with her for about 6 months now, with some other horses, some goats and some sheep. So this is the Brumby that's in a paddock. At the beginning, it was possible for Nat to get close. She would spook at something little like the flapping of a shirt or lifting of a hand, but she got to the stage where she could be carefully halted but still look quite frozen. Nat's also done work with her front hooves too, just while she was standing there. But one day she didn't have the rope halter. She had to move her in a bit of a rush. She used a halter with metal clips. The sound of the clip made her rear up and bolt, and since then they've been back to square one with no touch at all. So Nat's tried in the last, I think she might have had a Q&A that came through last month, and she tried walking up with your suggestion, walking up quite normally and then turning away at signs of stress, but that hasn't actually brought much help at all. So her approach has always sort of resulted in the default of her walking away. So she started with some treats and using those, hoping to change her mindset rather than approach and think away. And after 20 minutes of just standing and slowly reaching out, as usual, she can now stand with her nose touching her hand for quite some time. She's yawning a lot. And on 2 occasions, she actually walked towards her and she could scratch her neck. So lately, she seems to show herself a bit more. She's doing some gentle little air bites, which I just get you to explain what those little air bites are for. She's wondering if she's asking for a treat. But she just sort of feels that she's a little bit more daring if there's another pony with her, perhaps that she's got her on a lead, that they're working. Her question is, though, she's obviously, trying to get progress with this Brumby. It's taking a long time. It's sort of painstakingly slow. Are there horses that take years to sort of get comfortable with them? Or are there horses that perhaps it's just impossible to get them to feel comfort with humans? She has tried the face-up method. It didn't lead to much. Pressure in general doesn't seem to work. So she's at her wit's end in some senses. Should she give up and just let her live with her herd? Her hooves obviously need that work, though she's a bit concerned that that's got to be something that has to come into the equation. Any thoughts?
The first thing I want to sort of really make clear to everybody is pressure helps horses. Okay, so we have to think on the lines of pressure is there to help horses. And through pressure, horses find softness and clarity. No matter how it's very easy in a frightened horse, it's very easy in using negative reinforcement in the wrong way to create a release hunter. And so you have to be so careful that if you create a release hunter, the horse will always seek. It'll always only soften when the pressure is reducing, not increasing. And that's a problem, because what will happen, the horses can get comfortable with us, but they won't be comfortable with the trimmer who's in a hurry, or the vet who's got to come through and he's got plenty of jobs to do. So gaining a connection and softness with the horse in a nice, comfortable, soft place without pressure is going to be okay for some time to get the horse to trust you, but it's not going to trust pressure. You'll create a little cocoon where the horse seeks release. So you've got to change your thought through using some retreat rewards, which is good. It's, if a horse can get some food off you, then it obviously will start to go, I can trust them a little bit. The catch is if the treats have got to trust you, but then at some stage you still have to apply pressure or put it through pressure. So yes, you need trust. The air bites, you could be right. You could be right that there's little kind of things where the horse is going, I want some food, but if the air bites are happening when you're scratching or grooming, then the horse is obviously starting to feel comfortable to express itself, which could be air biting, as in mutual grooming. It's enjoying what's happening, and it could sometimes come back and scratch you and come to you with some communication. So a lot of horses will start to relax a little bit, and they'll feel that that good feeling of the scratching or the grooming that you might be doing when you're near it, and it might stimulate some of that air biting, which comes from like the feeling of the mutual grooming when it's going to come around and groom another horse. So that could be something in the air biting. The other thing, the air biting could be the horse is a bit confident, is starting to be enough a bit confident. So when you're in the space, it's getting confident enough to challenge. So remember, a little flighty horse, its first go-to is always going to be to ping off and go to flight. But when it's comfortable in there and it starts to get a bit more comfortable with you, it might start to go, I don't like that, or you're a bit too close, and start to air bite a bit and show you that maybe it doesn't like that as well. That's another thing that can happen, which is a healthy thing, because the horse has just got to a stage that it says, I'm not just going to run away because you're a monster. I trust you enough, like another horse, or not yet, but it's almost like that Brumby, if another horse walked up to it, it would put its ears back and do something and say, go away. But if a human walked up, it'd run off because of the threat. But the less threat in you, the more the horse can communicate with you like another horse. So air biting could be a way. It just depends what it goes with. It goes with a certain expression. Okay, so the harder the expression, the more it might be a defensive air bite. A bit of a sort of a softer expression could be, I want to groom, or it could be, I'm feeling nervous. Can I have a treat? Because sometimes the treats help with that nervous thought. So, yeah, anyway, something to think about. So, moving along. Something I would do, I was thinking about this and about the one thing that you tried where you approach, and then when with normally, and then when the horse pays it, you sort of retreat. Don't retreat, okay? So something I would probably do with your horse is I'd put it in a fairly small yard, not one that's going to make it too restricted, but like a smaller sort of round yard, and I'd just go in there and I'd just walk around. I just walk around normally, check the rails, walk towards the horse. If the horse freezes, I keep walking. If it pings off a little bit, I just walk off in a new direction, and I just keep walking around, and I'd walk towards the horse. It's going to ping off over there, and I'm just going to ping off over there, and then I'm going to walk towards it. It's going to ping off over there, and I'm going to just walk off in a new direction, not retreat away, but I'm just going to keep myself busy walking around. And then at a moment when I see a bit of caution in the horse and I see it think a little bit, I might just stop a little bit, and then I might just quietly ping off somewhere else. So it's almost like I deflect a little bit instead of back off. Okay. So and I just keep myself busy, and I might go into a place for 2 hours. If you thought you had 2 hours to spend with that horse, I'd spend 2 hours walking normally and just doing things, show them what it is like to be. I'm a person, but my intention is not to do anything to you. I'm just going to walk towards you and then walk over there. I'm going to walk over there. I'm going to walk towards you and I'm going to walk over there. And just keep doing that sort of thing around it for a while. And you'll find that curiosity start to get in the horse. And as you're walking off, it'll start to go, where's it going? And they start to kind of come in, and they might start to follow you a little bit. They get curious eventually. But after half an hour of not being hurt or being chased or running away from you, because every time it went to run away, you just walked off in a new direction. So you took the heat off it straight away, but didn't back off it like approach and retreat. That, how approach and retreat can be very intense. Like, I'm approaching you and now I'm retreating and I'm staring at you the whole time and doing some sort of thing. It's just like you're just walking normally towards the horse, and then you look somewhere else and you walk to that. You don't even look at your horse as you walk away. You just walk off somewhere else, check a rail, do something else. And you'll find that bubble will get smaller until you can just about approach and touch the horse. There'll be a point that you'll be able to, the horse may freeze, and it may freeze for that point of touch. And that doesn't matter, because you can unfreeze it, because as soon as you touch, you're going to touch it, and it's going to be a microsecond of a touch, and then you'll be walking off and checking the rail over there somewhere. And then you go in again and do it until you watch them. They'll start to soften as you touch them. And that's the point where the increasing pressure softens the horse, not the release. The release will soften the horse for a while. As you walk away, the horse will breathe and lick and chew and, do all that, and might get curious and might follow you. But there'll be a point where as you're approaching, the horse will go, I'll let go of that thought first. And they'll soften as you walk into them. And you just commit to that for a while. And then every day you'll start to learn that you don't have to creep around it. Okay? The more so approach and retreat, as in at clinics, I'll teach approach and retreat, approach and retreat, approach and retreat. Now, what that is approach and retreat is the very guru listening approach and retreat. You walk up, you see a sign of tension, you wait a little, wait till the horse softens, and then you step back, and then you go in again. But that is teaching the horse that every time you get anxious, I'll stop. Everything stops until you relax. And then it goes again. So you're teaching those horses, if you do that all the time. Now, it's okay for the first few touches to just build a bit of trust. And that's why I encourage someone to do that. But once I've started to do that, I'd start to go to approach and retreat, or approach and direct myself somewhere else and walk off. So basically, I'm not going to reward the horse every time it gets nervous by stopping. I'm not going to be that good of a listener that the horse teaches me to be a guru. So one day, nobody else but me can touch the horse. Okay? So if you become a guru and the horse has taught you to listen that well, then it'd have trouble with other people, especially these really wild little horses. So you've got to start to be more conscious of what you're doing. I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm going over there and I'm doing that, but still be mindful of your horse's anxiety. And but don't let that horse's anxiety control every fibre in your body and make you stop at certain times and wait at certain times and do all that, because it will only trust you because you've moulded to what that horse needs. what that horse wants, I should say. But that horse doesn't, what it wants is not what it needs. What that horse needs is to trust you coming up with the tools to trim its feet. What it needs is to trust you when you come up and you want to move it into another paddock, and not be frightened every time someone comes into a herd and things like that.
Okay, so there's a couple of things in there, because I think my impression with Nat was, just from remembering her from previous questions, that she was quite keen to sort of do the work out in the paddock. And you sort of have straight away said a couple of things in there, which I think, might have been not what people were expecting. Was one, pressure's okay, and then two, let's bring it into a yard. So can we just nut the yard thing out very quickly first? Is it possible for her to make progress with this horse in the paddock? That sort of question, that can horses like that ever get comfortable with people, or do they need to be in a confined area where there's pressure, unavoidable pressure, because there's a fence, you can't get away from you, and you even use a yard specifically for horses like this, that's a round yard that's completely enclosed, it's got rubber all the way around it, right? It's sort of 6 foot tall. They can't see out, so therefore the only thing they can see is you. So there's no distraction. It's like, it's really sort of lessons that they can focus on, and you obviously you structure it in the right way. But can she get those results out in the paddock, or is it actually better in the long term to just nut this out in a small yard? Because that's the reality of life, isn't it? You've got to be able to cope with that pressure when you do their feet, and to help them feel comfortable with the pressure. Surely that's actually an advantage, which is what your first point was.
Yeah, well, the thing about it, if you put her in too small of a yard, it's going to be too small. But there's a yard that gives the horse enough space, and it could be just a big square yard. It doesn't matter if it's enclosed or not, really, at the end of the day. Really, my rubber yards were more for safety than visual stimulant. Over the years, it was more the safety of the horse not getting his leg through rails and stuff like that. And if they sort of run around, they get a bit panicked or whatever, they're safe. But I didn't mind them looking around and stuff like that. That was completely fine. But what you want to sort of think is, if I put the horse in too small of a yard, it's frantic. I don't want it to be frantic. But a bigger yard, I can walk around, the horse goes over there, but it realises that it can only go 50 metres away. And then I'm going to walk over there, and you're going to be in that area for quite some time. As long as the horse has enough space to get some sort of, a bit of like, I've moved over here, I'm safe, I can process this yard, and I'm not in this little bottleneck trap that I'm just frantic. So you just put them in a space that's easy, workable. Now, you can do this in a paddock, you just got to allow more time. That's all you've got to do. I've sent people out on a mission with horses similar to do this, and there was actually an online lesson I did, and the lady, she said, we're in a rush, when you're bringing up kids and all that sort of stuff, and I've forgot my headphones and everything. I said, well, just sit your iPad on the post, and I can see the back paddock there from a distance. I'll send you off for 5 minutes, and then come back after 5 minutes, and we'll have a conversation, and then I'll send you back again. And so from the distance, I could see what she was doing. And it was a similar lesson. She just walked towards that horse. But if you watched the horse only went to the other horses or went over there. It didn't just run the paddock frantic. It always did a little loop back to sort of safety somewhere. So she just walked up to it. It pinged off, and she walked off somewhere else, and she walked up again. And you saw that horse get closer and closer and closer. So even out in a sort of bigger paddock, it works. It's just obviously sometimes you've got to allow more time. But a horse if that horse is already a bit curious and it's already kind of looked at you a little bit, it's not a wild horse. It's just going to run for miles and just go off. So, and the paddock that it's probably in, is it a 100-acre paddock or is it a 1-acre paddock? A 1-acre paddock, you can walk around and usually the horse will go somewhere and it'll come back there, and you're just going to keep doing it. You're just going to walk towards the horse's bubble, it'll ping out over there, you just walk off. You walk towards the bubble, it'll ping off, you just walk over here, and you just deflect it. And eventually it'll get to the stage that running away, moving away, took the heat off a little bit, but you didn't put a lot of pressure on it. You just walk towards it normally, and soon enough that bubble gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But it will work quicker if you can put it in a, if you can have boundaries a little closer, as long as the boundaries, as I said, don't make it frantic like a little tiny stable or something. That'd be too much. So you've got to work on a paddock size that'll suit both you and the horse without overwhelming the horse, and on the other hand, without making it too hard for you, where the horse goes off, a kilometre and you've got to walk a kilometre.
We'll move on to the next Brumby then, because I think you sort of, I understand that the paddock's totally fine and that she can make that progress there. So that's really positive. That's really positive. The next Brumby question is from Blair, and she's got a Brumby straight out of the wild, same thing, 6 months. She's had it for 6 months. But she wants to attend a Brumby challenge in June. So that's in about 6 months' time. She's used your method of creating draw, and she's been able to catch her with great success. She's watched your videos on teaching horses to lead and making horses responsible for themselves. She's coming on nicely, but can be a little stubborn if she tries to lead her in a direction she doesn't want to go. So now she's getting her comfortable with being touched all over. And she started touching her down the front legs and wants to start to pick those up. But she's realising she also needs to get her started to work under saddle. She doesn't want to rush that side of it. But what steps can she take to start moving towards getting her under saddle? What videos should she be watching to get good progress?
Just the little sort of thing that popped up in my mind is she's still hard to lead when she's going somewhere nervous. Which means still she blocks up in the lead rope, which means she freezes and has a strong backward thought, which means if you were going to pick up a front feet, lead her into a saddle blanket, she's not going to want to lead into it. So basically, if she kind of stops and gets resistant when she doesn't want to go towards away from home or towards something scary, then you've got to think about, okay, there's a freeze in there that when I approach her with a saddle blanket or I approach her to pick up a feet, she's going to freeze and suck back like that. Okay, so that leading thing has to be addressed. So basically, just do more leading. So basically, don't worry about handling for a couple of days or more. Just get her to lead up. Just even like the some of the videos, you'll see me doing a lot of wave the flag, get them to push back, have a backward thought, and then step forward and nothing happened. Wave the flag, get them to step forward. So basically you're creating a negative stimulant in front of them that makes them kind of go, oh, crikey, that's a bit scary. And they might have a backward thought, and then they'll push back, but you wait and you keep the stimulant going to keep them searching until they step up and realise that going towards that thing that was kind of negative didn't cause any problems, and it released the pressure on their pole for a moment, and they went, oh, righto, that worked. I can do that. So it means that they can go towards negative things. Okay, not negative, becomes positive when they can go towards a negative thing. So I'm not talking about negative as in take something away and positive add something. I'm talking about the feeling, positive and negative feelings. So a float is negative feeling, oh, I'm going to push back. Oh, I stepped forward, nothing happened, the float didn't attack me. Okay, so you have to get that working really, really well, because when you go up with a saddle blanket, the horse is going to go, and then it's your choice. Do you keep rubbing it and approach and retreat till the horse softens, or do you get it to do something to release that brace and that backward thought and come forward with its thoughts and soften? So work on the leading and then expose it to coming forward to lots of things that cause that, I'm going to suck back. And then when you can lead the horse equally in any direction and equally towards things that make it feel not so good, then you can lead it into the saddle blanket, lead it into the girth, lead it into the foot handling, lead it into the hind feet handling. So if every time you feel a horse freeze a little, block a little, you just put a feel through that lead and say, think forward, step through, and it empowers them to soften and make decisions whilst they're nervous. And then you'll have that horse kind of following the feel. A good thing with doing this in your training on the ground, in the handling process, so handling is not handling, handling is education. So you educate a horse into handling. That's what I say to people. You don't just handle a horse and then hope it's educated when it spooks. You lead it into education, okay? So once the horse has an alternative, it can follow the feel, and it hasn't going towards that, what it thought was conflict, didn't hurt it, it will become more trusting and realise that those things aren't dangers. And the good thing about doing it is the horse will be more responsive and trusting of the rein when you finally get up there, because you've grabbed for that rope and said, soften, follow the feel every time the horse has had a hard thought, and it's learned to follow that and trust that, then it's going to trust the rein a lot more when you ride. So work on that a lot, Claire, and that'll really, really, I find it speeds up the process a lot more, because you'll get the horse well handled, but it'll be loose and soft at the same time, opposed to just standing still putting up with stuff.
And the videos that she can watch, obviously there is all of the young horse handlings videos and the young horse starting videos. So we sort of lump them together, because when you're handling a horse, introducing new things, you want it to be moving around you in the right way and comfortable with it. And so a lot of the handling that Mark does with the foals, he's building them up for the saddle. So if you watch those videos, they are actually really helpful for anyone that's starting a horse, as well as the specific starting a horse videos, which is when he introduces the saddle and the reins and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and anything like leading towards danger, leading with a belly rope, and even some of the aggressive horse videos, because that taps into the freeze and the emotional tension in horses. And a lot of that will help these youngsters that are quite nervous as well.
Plenty to look at. Okay, last question for this session, Mark, is from Karen, and it's about a young horse that's nervous in the float. She says, would you do its first few trips on its own or with another horse?
I always err on the side of caution, because the horse is less likely to have a meltdown with another horse than without another horse. So if you take it on a first trip without another horse, it has a meltdown, the next time you put it in the float, it's going to be quite scary. So if the horse survived the experience with another horse, at least it survived the floating experience and it had some company, okay? But then you're aiming to get the horse to work separately from another horse. So the idea with it is, yeah, maybe with another horse it floats better, but if your horse is a needy horse away from the float, then you risk that it's still going to be panicked as soon as it goes away from the other horse. So you have to be very, very good at teaching it to load on its own, stand in there on its own, not need another horse within cooee. That all has to work really well. Okay. If you wanted to travel it with another horse, you get it loading, standing well, and then you load the other horse. The young horse always is the one that goes in first for a few moments, because you've already taught it to stand in there for some minutes already. You've already worked on that. Put the other horse in, teach the other horse to load and unload and load while you've got the young horse in there. And then that gets the horse used to the other horse leaving and going on as well. And then take them for a little drive together, the experienced horse and the young horse to drive. And it'll go, oh, you're here, I'm here, I survived. Okay? Then the next day you do your leading and loading, same as without the other horse, everything's the same. But the horse has done all that loading on its own, it's already done that. The only thing's missing is the other horse, so it might be the next day. But then, in a bit, you're aiming that you just don't put the other horse on there, because remember, you put the young one on first, you've taught it to stand in there first, the other one only just comes in, oh, there's the other horse, it's coming with me for a little, trip, but it hasn't needed that other horse for everything else. Okay, and then after 2 or 3 goes with the other horse, you probably just drive off without the other horse, because the horse should be centred without the other horse. If you're seeing the horse is not centred without the other horse, then you might be leading it into the illusion that it needs company to float all the time, because it's the only thing that's making that horse trust the float is the company. So you get the trust in the float without the company, and then you might travel them together just so it's just a bit helpful. But there's a lot of horses I've travelled on their own because I didn't have another horse, and it's been fine as long as you worked on getting them to be comfortable, moving softly in a float, trusting, standing in there, all that sort of stuff, and that's fine. But for a long journey, for anything like that, it just makes them a little bit more comfortable, especially their first long journey, going back to a long journey. So you've taught them to travel on their own and with another horse. For their first long journey, I think it's good to carry another horse with you, because, they get to a point that maybe after half an hour they're going, I've never been in here. for this long, and there's another horse here, I'll be okay, and I'll go that little further to get to destination. So that just might help them on their first few long trips. But you're aiming somehow to wean them off that other horse. So you might travel 20 minutes without another horse. The next week you might travel 25, 30 minutes without another horse if you're really serious about getting them soft. Until it wouldn't matter how long they're in the float, as long as they come off and you show them that you put them on, you'll take them off. You're not going to leave them in there forever, and increase the time they're in the float, then they should be fine.
Hope those answers helped everybody. Thank you for the fantastic questions, and thank you, Mark. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, everybody.
If you want to nut out the root cause of any issues that you might be having, jump online and take a look at Mark's online training videos. This is your ticket to learning Mark's horsemanship yourself, designed for people just like you. And it has an array of incredibly useful content backed up with his support. So this is our personal invite to you. Take a look. It's free for the first week, and then just $20 a month if you want to continue. Cancel anytime.